background. In the news several weeks ago, it was reported, we were informed that a private collector on the island of Maui had worked with a French auction house to auction off these artifacts. About a fourth of them are Native Hawaiian artifacts. We did reach out to, or try to make attempts to contact Mr. Brock on the island of Maui. Uh, he was very adamant that that these were his possessions. All we were questioning is the providence in terms of does the, do does he have the appropriate documentation uh, for them, and then whether or not some of them were were items that perhaps may be repatriated, but given the current circumstances that all of the items are in France and he's living on the island of Maui, we tried to do some legal work whether or not we can try to stop it or provide an injunction, but because the items are not in his possessions, we could not move on any legal. So we felt that at least a proclamation from our board may at least express our advocacy. We were trying to contact him to, in good faith, maybe have a civil discussion about curatorship and even maybe work with other Hawaiian organizations, but that wasn't successful. We believe that the auction is started yesterday and goes for the next several days. So hopefully we'll share with you the intent of the proclamation and then the approval, at least get it out to the auction house itself. Uh, Sterling and Kai.
Aloha mai kako, aloha Chair, members of the committee, Sterling Huang, Public Relations Officer. So what we have before you is an action item requesting approval for of a resolution. Once the resolution, if it's adopted by the BAE and then the board, we will be sending it to the French auction house tomorrow. As a heads up, the auction is currently underway, so that's why this reso and taking action on it is there's a sense of urgency. With that, I'll turn it over to Kai Markel, who is a subject matter expert and much more familiar with this than anybody here. Okay, Mo.
Aloha, Chair.
Aloha, Kai.
Members. So, the resolution we have before you, it may seem like it's a little late and in order to stop an auction that's occurring right now as we speak. But we do believe it sends an important message, and it also begins to address a larger issue of artifact looting in Hawaii and black market sales and trade, and that's why we think it's important to follow through with this resolution. As Kapuana mentioned, the biggest issue is provenance, the origin of something. Namea Hawaii, Namea Makamai, these cultural treasures, it's always an issue of where did it come from? And was it obtained lawfully? Was it obtained as a gift, or was it stolen? Was it taken from a grave, someone else's possession? Mr. Rainer Werner Bach amassed a large collection of Pacific artifacts, not only Hawaiian, but Maori and Cook Islands and different countries. And the collection is pretty remarkable for its size and its content. Like most collectors, he purchased it direct from other collectors, probably at auctions, different ways of acquiring from many sources, which always leads you to wonder if some of the sources weren't pono, because we know the trade happens illicitly in Hawaii and internationally. In his collection, there are some rare and important historic items. One is an Ihe Lau Meke barbed spear which was collected on Captain Cook's voyage, his third and final voyage. There's four known in the world from that collection of those four spears. One of them is in a private collection in Germany, which actually came to Hawaii in the Cook Forster exhibition at Honolulu Museum. And there was a kuahuluman of ku and one of these ihela meke. Another one's in Mark Blackburn's collection. Another one's in a private collection. And this is the fourth that I guess was just sold today, I guess for $60,000. Having a spear next to colonial pu'uza, hu'ula, and mahioli that came from the time, it would just be another beautiful mana for our people to experience that. So that's just a shame that was sold, and we hope the person who has it doesn't have their house burned down and the spear burns, and we lose these treasures from people's negligence, or people die and the heirs don't know what these things are. They give them away or don't care for them. So there's always that danger of irreparable loss. He has kahuna bowls, kapuahi kunianana, which are very personal bowls, a lot found with burials, very spiritual. He's got ie kuku, the kapa beaters, and the hohoa. Many of them are weathered, and when they're weathered, you tend to think they were found like in caves and places on other people's property, because the heirloom ones, these families are very cared for and oiled and nice, but there's a lot of weathered ones, so it raises the issue of whether these were just found and collected and sold to people, which ended up with him. There's kapa, and kapa collections are difficult to source, but we had a complaint about a year ago from some people on the Big Island that people were descending down cliffs, stealing the burial kapa on Kauai High, Kohalasa, taking it from the burial caves, the kapa, because the kapa pieces, are rare. You cut them up and you can sell and make a lot of money from the kapa. And then he has pounders and other utilitarian objects, but you'd be surprised how many barrels I've encountered in the last 22 years with koi pounders on their chest or with them. Very personal item. Ko'i, the adze, beautiful examples. We may think just ko'i are utilitarian and something that you had to go up 13,000 feet in Mauna Kea and get that adze and take it down, and all that effort, wasn't just willy-nilly left lying around. And then you talk about the Olopu adze of Kamehameha that was stolen from Hilo. That one ko'i caused him to launch an attack against Maui to get that ko'i back. So one ko'i can have tremendous spiritual and cultural significance, and that, it's always trying to figure out what is the importance of this item. And then umekes, lots of the beautiful coal bowls that people collect, put on your shelf. I remember Patches Damon Holt in her house had an umeke, coal umeke, ancient one, and it was pedigreed. Its mopu'auhau was kahikili, Nui Ahumanu's koi. And she had bought that for a large sum of money to preserve it. So you never know whose umeke you're dealing with. That's the sad thing, is that things get, scattered to the wind. So the other issue is potential human remains. There is a small ipu that has human teeth in it, and there's questionable fish hooks that could be of human bone. Might be one of our kupuna, part of the iwi being sold off as a fish hook, it's in somebody's house. So, those are the kind of concerns from the collection of Rainer Werner Bach that's being sold right now. Paris has had a string of auctions that were controversial. In 2013, they were selling 70 Hopi sacred kachina masks, and the Hopis tried to file suit. They actually filed suit in Paris, but looking at international law at the time and looking at domestic law in France, the court held up for the auction house. It wasn't the same Agutis auction house that we're dealing with today, but it was another auction. Luckily, there was a foundation that I think paid $530,000 to bid on everything, and then they gave it to the Hopis. So God bless them for stepping in. In 2015, another 13 Kachina dolls. They had a Lakota, actually, and in 2016, another auction with a Acoma Pueblo shield, which was very sacred. Lakota wore, I guess, a war outfit that had human hair and scalps and other things on it. And your two options are lawsuits, So Department of Interior, National Museum of American Indian, Justice Department, they got involved and tried to, threaten and ask that these things be brought back, and to no avail. France is its own sovereign country, and they're like, no, this is trade, this is all fair, all good. But the pressure in 2016 caused them to withdraw the Pueblo Shield from the auction, so that was a success. So you either have the lawsuit or you have diplomacy. Our lawsuit is not able to at this juncture. It's just too difficult and costs money and the time. But we figure the resolution goes through diplomacy. We can start setting the example. And we also have the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People now, which we cited in the reso. And that can be used as an international pressure that, we have a right to our cultural sacred objects and the disposition of them as a sovereign people. I think the bigger issue that this is going to address is um, just the market itself right now for artifacts. And it's almost like, we're looking at something happening in France when we have so much right here in our own backyard that is happening that I think we need to be aware of and address. The market for native hawaiian objects is huge. The black market is huge, commands really big prices. People are still looting burial sites to this day. I remember Matt Levi did a special some years ago, and he interviewed people, and the guys were like ice addicts, and they're going up and looting caves on the Big Island, taking all kind of things out, and they're selling it. They get money, they get drugs. It goes to collectors. They had collectors who are willing to buy. And that's still happening today. We have domestic laws like NACRA. NACRA doesn't allow you to sell human remains or sacred objects that fall under that legislation. I don't know if you remember Kunupa Cave, but OHA, we were a co-claimant along with Kalawai Hawaii, Hawaiian Burial Council, Huimalamina Kupuna Waine, on some very special iwi and umeke and different things that were repatriated back to a Kunupa Cave on the Big Island, and it ended up getting broken into. And then it was on the market already, the umeke, and things were showed up. And the two people, John Carter and Daniel Taylor, got caught from that, and we worked with the prosecutors. They ended up getting sentenced to federal prison. John Carter, unfortunately, expired, passed away before his sentencing, and Taylor went to prison. And so this is still relevant and happening right today. I think one big issue is getting proof. There are people who have artifacts in their families. They're cared for. They're shared. You have people who collect and then they donate it to a museum, which is wonderful. But it's the commercialization, the commodification that causes the looting, destruction of our burial sites and our caves, breaking into our caves and our most sacred places. It's hard to prove something where it came from, and even enforcement, HPD, DOCARE, DLNR, the guy can walk down the trail with a bag full of artifacts, and unless you saw him come out of the cave, it's very difficult for them to be able to, stop him and prove that he took it from there. It's just, there's all kind of problems, but we know it's happening. If you see artifacts on eBay constantly with coralline growth on them, coral, that means they were found in the ocean. And the people will say, oh, I found this snorkeling. Anything with that coralline growth is state-owned historic property because it's within the 3 miles and was found in state land. But people are constantly selling. We stopped in ads on Maui, a beautiful koi that had coralline growth. And DOCARE went, the guy turned it over because he realized it was illegal, and it went to the Bailey House. But every day there's artifacts being sold with that. So, it goes to resources at historic preservation, enforcement, and then a lot are collected from archaeological services. There's people who loot, and then there's people who conduct archaeological work, and then they keep things for themselves. And then the landowners don't really care. The law in Hawaii says the landowner owns it. And the big Japanese corporation who's developing 1,000 acres in Kona, they're not going to care about all the artifacts. They just want to get the permits and house or whatever. So a lot of times the collections just kind of quietly disappear. and the state doesn't have a curation facility for it. We're supposed to have places to malama these items up to national park standards, and there is no place like that. So you end up with collections in storage containers rotting away, with copper peters getting wet and disappearing. You have human remains in storage containers, and there's no facility for it. So that's another big issue domestically. And then lastly is, OHA has been offered collections in the past. People who say, this person has a large collection and they want to donate it somewhere, or people want to start regional museums. Uncle Mel Hakalahiki was trying to get something going in Kauai High for the Honakoa Gulch, and families have items they want to donate somewhere where they can be taken care of and shared and perpetuated, but they don't exist in those facilities. Archaeologists who have collections pass away, and then they have this huge collection, and the state, sometimes contacts us like, do you guys want to take care of it or curate it or whatever? And we don't have it. We don't have the capacity or space. So they end up like donating it to different universities for teaching collections, or ends up dispersing to the four winds or whatever. So, we look at what it means to our people to have that material culture and preserve it. So much has been lost, so much has been destroyed. And I think this is a great message to send to Paris, that we care deeply about our Namea Hawaii. Holds more meaning than aesthetic art that you put on the wall. And as Claude Agutes, the president of Agutes Auction House said, and Jerry Bach loves it. He says, let this Hawaiian collection scatter to the wind, and then people will appreciate Hawaiian art or whatever. It means so much more to our people. I've gone out to schools and I've seen the excitement in kids to hold a pohaku and learn a story about it, and entire school of girls at Sacred Hearts, rocks and everything. They love it. You can't underestimate what it means to our people. And I think this is important for us to pass, but I think we need to continue the advocacy on the issue here, taking care of our Namea Hawaii, because we're getting less and less and less. That's our money.
Chair, so we have the resolution that is part of your packet. It's relating to the disposition of the Rainer Warner Brock collection of Namea Hawaii at the Agutes Auction House. So we could have a discussion or vote on the motion to pass it and then discussion as you please.
Could we have a motion to adopt the resolution, and then we'll have a discussion on it?
I'll make a motion to approve an OHA resolution
Okay.
relating to the disposition of the Rainer Werner Bach collection of Namea Hawaii at the Agutes Auction House.
Mahalo, Trustee Minzy. Could we have a second to the motion? Okay, motion made by Trustee Minzy, seconded by Trustee Waihe'e. Discussion.
This is just a question. Kai, what's his name? Mr. Rainer Werner Bach. Is
Call
he
him Jerry Bach.
Jerry Bach? Is he claiming that none of these items are like funerary? I mean, that they're not objects that would fall under the NAGPRA rule, or is he not even bothering to even answer any questions at all?
I'm not aware of any communication from him. He's not engaging us or anyone in the provenance and origin. It's only what's in the catalog of when he presents it to the auction house. They put provenance, and many of them don't have provenance. Some of them have questionable provenance from collectors who have a reputation for going into caves and taking things, and then they look weathered, like they've been exposed to the elements, so very suspicious.
Is the catalog online, or
It is.
it is? Oh, okay.
So we can make that PDF available. It's kind of hard to find because you have to translate French on the website to try and find things. So, but we can get it available.
Just a comment, Trustee Wade. So NAGPRA is a domestic law within the United States. So we did ask legal consultants whether or not that could be used, but because it's in another foreign country and sovereign, the NAGPRA laws would not apply to this situation. But the concern really is whether or not these items have sufficient provenance documentation under NAGPRA law, as some of the examples that Kai was sharing, whether they're funerary objects, have either human remains or bones that would require them to return.
Well, yeah, and also as claimants under NAGPRA, our concerns would always be there, regardless of whether it applies to the country or not.
Right.
We're still concerned about it.
Correct.
I'm not sure Mr. Bach's status, if he's got citizenship or a green card or what, but if he is subject to our laws and he offered for sale or transported objects taken from federal lands or illegally under NAGPRA, we might be able to get some jurisdiction over him for. I mean, we're not out to prosecute him. We don't have any. And it's not to disparage his reputation, but looking at if things turned out to be illegal, I think there might be ways to work around it.
Trustee Aquino?
Thank you, Chair. Kapuhana, Sterling, and Kai, thank you very much for the informative presentation. And I just want to say I love your passion. Trustee Leahu Issa and I had the privilege of representing OHA this past Sunday at the International Film Festival showing of Kalaniʻopu's Return of the Cape and the helmet. And I have to say, I was moved. I was proud to be Hawaiian, proud to be from Hawaii, and proud that Nāmea Hawaii have returned to Hawaii Nei. So I commend all the administration who worked so very hard on that film. It was chicken skin, as we say. I have a question. Perhaps KP can answer this, or either of you. Do we have a budget and a program and mandate within the Office of Hawaiian Affairs to deal with Nāmea Hawaii and their return to Hawaii? Do we have a program, a budget? Do we have a strategy for that?
So, Chair, we have monies that we normally budget for repatriation efforts, whether it's under domestic NAGPRA law. We're working still with museums, not so much human remains anymore, but mainly cultural objects that are very profound and associated with ali'i and potentially internments. We also try and budget money for international repatriations from museums in England and Europe. And those are efforts that we think are just. We don't, however, budget for acquisitions when these kind of auctions or other opportunities come up. I remember when I first started OHA, 2004, there was an auction in East Coast of computer equipment, electronics, and all these things, and then there was one Leiniho Palawa with hair and looked old. And we know a lot of the sailing ship ended up in Maine over there, and I just knew this ended up in somebody's estate. Nobody really cared what it was, and it ended up auctioning off with all this electronic computer equipment. I remember talking to Trustee Stander. I said, can OHA bid on it or do something? And by the time there was interest, but it's just like the machinations are slow here, unfortunately. And then it sold for like 16,000 and off to God knows where. But I keep thinking, brought that kupuna home, it would have been beautiful. So if we have something that's ready to go, things can actually be worked out potentially, but they try and talk about it and get approvals and all that. It just takes too long because you have to move. But we don't have a budget set aside for that type of bringing collections home. The other thing we can do is if we develop a policy for receiving donations. We've had the state approach us. We've had private people say, we have this huge collection. We'd like to preserve and donate it to OHA to keep and carry or whatever. And then it just kind of falls apart, the negotiations, because we really don't have a capacity right now or a policy or anything else. So if we can develop that, that would be a step forward. And I bet you people would say, oh yeah, this is less to say, here's my collection of things from my grandmother that I want preserved and shared with the Lapui. I don't want it sold off or whatever. And I think we would start seeing, you know, collection that we hold in trust for the Lapui starting to grow and boost.
Thank you. And I wasn't thinking only of budget, but I'm glad you mentioned that. I was thinking about our capacity to do diplomacy, to do negotiation, to actually be able strategically to address this problem in the long run.
So, Chair, definitely we have the diplomacy, we have the EK, we have the people here who can do that. Whether we can accept that kuleana and then start caring for these precious items that might need climate control, they might need special insect things, that's something that we have to, I think, build that capacity before we start taking and become kahu of things that are treasures, and then we can't just store them like in somebody's, room or something. It's like we have to have that forethought too, but we can do it. We can do it. Thank you. Thank you.
Trustee Aquino, last year the board approved the international engagement policy. It was very similar to the example you're using in this Warner Brock case, where if we had to exercise our role as an advocate in terms of diplomatic relations, that policy would allow us to venture into the borders beyond Hawaii and the U.S. And I would see this as an example of being able to engage the auction house or others internationally about further bringing awareness of the value of Mea Hawaii.
Sterling?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add, we didn't talk too much about the advocacy we did do on this. So I think this issue first came up in early March through media coverage. So we had a couple of news outlets covering it, Hawaii News Now. There was a Big Island online paper that covered it as well, and then a couple of others. As a result of that, we had beneficiaries come to the board and to our offices to discuss with staff. When that began happening, we found out, we immediately started doing our due diligence. We tried to get and it's difficult because a lot of the stuff is in French. So yeah, Kai reached out to the auction house itself to get some information. We got some roadblocks. I think they were not willing to really talk with us. Want to mahalo Trustee Lindsay, who staff helped us try to find Mr. Jerry Bach. So we reached out through her office and our CRCs to try and find him. We just knew he vaguely lived in Ha'iku based off of internet searches. And we finally found someone that knew him. That person tried to work with Kamana'o to sort of facilitate a discussion. There were roadblocks there as well. We had beneficiaries who happened to be on vacation in France right before the auction who held a protest. You guys probably saw that on TV. There was about 19 of them that tried to open up direct discussions as well with the auction house. But I think every one of these attempts to create a dialogue with either the collector or the auction house failed, and I think that's really why we sort of exhausted all of those options, and we are left with and in doing some due diligence on the legal aspect, we realized that this is probably our last recourse right here, is to make some sort of formal proclamation, release it out to the auction house this way, get some media coverage to it. So that's kind of what happened, and there was a lot of work. Kai and Kapohana did a lot of work trying to reach out both, and as well with our beneficiaries that went to France. There was a lot of work done to try and sort of open up negotiations, but almost all the negotiation attempts failed. Well, oh, and Mehana was there in France. So there were a lot of attempts made, but I think there's a reason why these auctions happen in France, not here. When they go and sell, Native American and Native Hawaiian cultural items in France because it's a little easier than doing it here. So.
Thank you, Sterling. Chair Machado, Trustee
My only
Ahuiz, and
question is the
Trustee Apo.
estimated value and the anticipation of Mr. Jerry Bach. What is he expecting to generate revenue based with the artifacts? Is that in the book?
So Chair, it's difficult for valuations because all auction houses will give an estimate, and they'll say this is the estimate of its, like the spear I think was 80,000, or 75,000 to 80, and I think it went for 60. Um, some people may not bid on certain items, so in general, the auction houses have raised millions of dollars off of the Hopi and the Apache and the Pueblo, so it is big money. But until the auction's over, nobody knows really what it's going to raise. It all depends on the buyers at the time. So the market's very volatile.
Trustee Ahuiz.
I don't know if OHA can start a nonprofit, but at the DOE, when the Board of Education had people that want to donate things to schools, or nice things, we didn't have any way to accept it, like Kai was saying. So we created a nonprofit organization, and these people could donate and then use it as a write-off because it was a nonprofit. So I don't know if we can do a foundation like UH Foundation. They have things they can accept. And DOE didn't have it. They had to create something like that. Oh, I don't know if you can hear me speak. No, so I don't know if OHA can do that. I think you can if they can do it as a state agency. You can accept because it has value. And that would be another way to, if they wanted to donate the spear. I thought the spear was so beautiful. I didn't say anything, but I thought, oh, I should go over there and go bid for it because it would be worth it to get that spear. I don't know about the other things, but I thought that spear was, whoa, with the cape, like Kai said. So if we did have a budget, like Trustee Akina mentioned, that would be great. Then we wouldn't have to go through all this approval thing. Let's go bid for it because it looked authentic enough to buy. Mahalo, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Apo.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think the subject is an important one, and thank you. My notion is this. Anytime I think we're going to look at, as piggyback of Trustee Aquino's comment about do we have a strategy, do we have a plan, and how well are we set to accommodate and address the issue? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is dealing with collectors to whom the financial aspects of dealing is an important matter. So obviously, anytime they're going to get a letter from a native organization, they're going to lawyer up, right? So we can't expect that those kinds of queries are going to receive any kind of response. If I think we do need to take a look at the issue and figure out to what level we are able to rise financially to expend some resources that would give us the biggest bang for the dollar. It occurs to me that in this world of mega million-dollar artifacts that we are probably not prepared to go to the highest level of care because it costs millions and millions of dollars. So it's one of those tough decisions, that we have to make at a board in deciding, how do we do our fiscal responsibility. But it's an important issue, and if nothing else, if we can figure out a level to which we can rise, and it is affordable, and we do it well, as long as we do it well with whatever we have, then I think we'll be okay. So I do support the resolution. And then a question, now, are these auctions, are they public auctions? Do people know what's being auctioned? It is? Okay, so we would have access to the catalog as to who bought it for what amount, and that's something that we can archive so that we know where the items went. Yes.
Yeah, I just want shares. The auction itself, like most are public. There's catalogs, there's estimate prices, but not all auction houses release the buyer's info or even the final price. Sometimes you have to pay for it, and you get a listing of the final prices. And if anyone knows, Regina Kwanakoa passed away recently, and her estate just went up for sale, and there were some very nice historical treasures, and but a estate and just sell off and make whatever, and it's unfortunate, but it continues to happen. I think if we have a policy and a place, we may not have to expend millions. People will say, you know what, these are special things in my family. I don't know if my grandkids are going to sell it or take care of it, even care about it. I'd like to give it to somebody, and Bishop Museum isn't always the choice repository. Museums can sell for the collections now, and they do. If they go out of business, they sell, which happens. But I think something that's preserved in perpetuity for the Lahui would be a wonderful place that people would start donating and giving to people who care.
Yes.
Yeah, and the nonprofit sounds very interesting.
Kapuana?
Yes. I just want to thank Trustee Apo for that comment, is because I did reach out to the Kaihatu from Te Papa Museum who helped to repatriate the Kalani o Pu'u Cape and Mahiole to get some feedback, like what are we really dealing with. Um, uh, from his understanding as well, it's a public auction, but because of the reputation of the auction house, he was pretty confident that the buyers who were going to be there were pretty elite, um, either museums representing museums or private collectors. I spoke to a beneficiary from Kona who was in contact from a wealthy Chinese family from China who was going to the auction and heard of it, as well as for some, I believe, some Arabians. So we are dealing with a global international market here, and I think all artifacts, native indigenous artifacts, are seem to be valuable. But I think planning, given our our history of repatriation, uh, but also the movement now of treasures and wanting them to return back to their native homeland is very important. I also spoke to the Prime Minister from Rarotonga, who was concerned as well. But because the network is so broad, and we probably need to organize as Hawaiian community, and then how we collaborate with other Pacific Islanders on it would help. But we would have to. I just agree because we cannot afford the millions and millions of dollars. But with the Ihilau Meki that's going for $60,000, maybe we can afford some, maybe not all, but and build up some kind of a program and funding for it.
Chairman, it's the irony is kind of like the land that was stolen also. If you want it, you got to buy it back.
Yeah.
Which is what we do, right? So
Today, people have a lot of cash. The pink diamond, 74 mil. It was auctioned off in Hong Kong. 74 mil for one diamond. Cash. American dollars.
Any more questions, concerns, Trustee Aquino?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support this resolution because I believe in the due diligence and the good work that administration has done. But I have some misgivings about the process a little bit. I do think it would be good for us to look at increasing our capacity to handle these types of negotiations before coming to the board meeting and before making it a public matter. Because we're in a catch-22. We have one value that is accomplished by sending the resolution from a public relations point of view. As Sterling said, we send a message, a strong message. But when we do that, we also limit our options. For example, this message speaks of the commodification and sensationalism and the willful and the wanton sale. If you're going to negotiate with someone, you don't sit down and tell them that they're a bad person right away. and it also creates some expectations for our constituents and our beneficiaries. It actually says that we resolve that we will be party to negotiations for the disposition of these items, and I don't know that we have actually made a commitment to be a financial party to the return of these items. And so this is not to object to the resolution, but to urge us that we increase our capacity to handle this off record in the future. And there are so many creative avenues. For example, maybe we would do something that met the needs of Mr. Rainer Warner Bach, name something in honor of him, meet some value he has. I know he had wanted, according to the media, to establish a museum and couldn't find partners for it. Maybe we could bring together one of Hawaii's billionaires with him to do that. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that, but pointing out that there are a lot of things we can do off record. The last thing I'll mention is this. This resolution actually is something that contributes to the financial value of the artifacts by showing how rare they are, by showing how much we want them, and so forth. And so in some sense it works against us, because any of us who negotiate for real estate or for something else know the value of showing disinterest. Say, it's not all that important. But here we've played our cards. And so for that reason, I hope that in the future we'll have a greater capacity to negotiate behind the scenes so that we're not simply making a statement in public. But I will support this resolution, and I thank the administration for their hard work on it.
Any more comments, questions, concerns? If not, Kama, roll call vote.
Trustee Ahuisa.
Aye.
Vice Chair Ahuna, excuse. Trustee Akana, excuse. Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Apo.
Aye.
Trustee Hululi.
Aye.
Trustee Machado.
Yes.
Trustee Wahe.
Yes.
Chair Lindsay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. The motion to approve this resolution is adopted.
Mahalo, Kai and
Thank you,
Sterling.
thank you.
Good work.
Sterling,
Good
thank
work.
you, Kai. Thank you,
Thank you,
Kiki.
Kai.
We'll jump back to item 4A.
Yes, Chair. I call upon Jocelyn Doan, the Public Policy Manager, to go over our legislative matrix that's in your packet, and an update as we move into this legislative.
Thank you, Justin, for
Aloha,
your
Chair.
patience.
Nice shirt.
Thank you.
Aloha, committee members. I brought Kamaile up to the table because we have a few
Mighty.
burial council GMs that we wanted to discuss. There are 3 items that are not on the matrix. We've been getting GMs periodically, so a few of them were not able to make on the matrix, and 2 of them have hearings tomorrow. The first one is GM 600 and 601 for Jordan Copito for the Island Burial Council, Hawaii Island. Kamali, you want to share a little bit about our recommendation is to support Jordan.
Yes. So actually, I'll just, if it's okay, just go through all of it. So GM 600 and 601, some of 2 of the burial council appointees have 2 GMs, and then just to explain that is because some of them will be filling out the remainder of a term, which will end either this year or next year, and then it's an additional appointment for another term to start after that. And so those would be like kind of like the equivalent of interim appointments. And so the first 2, which were not already in the matrix, are the 2 people who are being heard in tomorrow's Hawaiian Affairs hearing, who are not OHA nominees. And so one of them is Jordan Calpito, who is up for the Hilo representative seat. He attended UH Hilo and UH Manoa and studied in Hawaiian language, anthropology, and political science. He's also a guest lecturer on burial preservation at UH Hilo and is currently pursuing an MA and then eventually a PhD in cultural heritage. And he's also a former burial site specialist from the SHPD for the Maui, Lanai, and Molokai region. But he is originally from Hawaii Island. So he's up for a Hilo seat. And then also up tomorrow will be Mary Maxine Kaholelio, who might be a familiar name. She's been serving on the Hawaii Island Burial Council for many years, off and on, and has always been a very active volunteer at the QLCC. And this morning, Kai referred to her as a one-woman warrior. She's very frequently on her own, advocating for all kinds of historic preservation-related issues, but especially burials. So we'll be supporting her as well, with the board's approval. And then I'm just gonna jump down to the. No. Okay, never mind.
So these are the two burial council seats that we'd like to add to the matrix. So it's GM 600, GM 601, and GM 602. We did also have a water commission. We got the names for the water commission. One we're very happy about. His name is, and this is to continue Kamana Beamer's time served on the commission. So they'd like to appoint him again. The other, Paul Meyer. He used to work at Maui Land and Pine. He's been working as an administrator at the Maui Board of Water Supply. We're not recommending we take a position on him at this point. So we would like to support Kamana consistent with our past positions. So those are the three GMs and requested additions to the matrix. If we didn't have any questions on those, we're going to move on to the first page of the matrix for the other new position requests, including more burial council nominations.
What was the first nomination from Big Island? What's his name?
Jordan Calpito. Jordan Jordan Calpito Calpito. He didn't write that on his resume if he is.
Okay, so on the big matrix, we only have a small handful of new positions that we're recommending. The first is SCR 59. That's on page 1, item 1. This resolution would urge State Department to give due consideration to Native Hawaiian-owned businesses, in addition to businesses owned by women and veterans. We're recommending supporting this measure as consistent with our own efforts, our ongoing efforts to support and promote Native Hawaiian-owned businesses. This includes, our maintenance of a list of Native Hawaiian-owned businesses, the features of these businesses that we provide through Kawaiola, through our social media, our business loan programs, and so forth. So we're recommending supporting this resolution. The next four, I'll hand, there are borough council nominations, so I'll hand it back to Kamaile to talk about the nominees.
Right, so these next four were OHA nominees, and so they're all on page 2 and then moving into page 3. So item number 6 will be, most of these are for Hawaii Island because actually last year, in the previous years, we've kind of like consistently nominated people as we could get them, and just last year, for some reason, the governor's Office of Boards and Commissions they were able to put in all of our nominees for all the other islands, but for some reason just didn't have time to get to the Hawaii Island people. So Hawaii Island has been struggling with quorum for the past year because they had a bunch of people who expired. And so now we have those 2 that we previously discussed going to Hawaii Island, and then we have 3 more here, which will also be going to Hawaii Island. So that should really go a long way to help them with their quorum issues. So the first one is Norman Kleimuloa, who was an OHA nominee from 2013. And he, he's been a long-time advocate in the region. He has long family ties to Kona, has been maintaining his family's kuleana since 1850 there, is very actively involved in community organizations in that community, including the Royal Order of Kamehameha, and he's currently, and has been for a long time, the caretaker of Ahaumi and Nikelike. And then also the next one, also on page 2, item 7, is Scott Hailey Mahoney for Ka'u region. And this has been the most long-standing vacancy on the Hawaii Island Burial Council that we have not yet been able to find a candidate for since we started this, or since I started this. So it's really exciting that we finally have somebody to fill that seat. He has long family genealogy in Ka'u. For the past 20 years, he's been working primarily in helping to clear unexploded ordnance on Koho'olawe as well as Hawaii Island. And through the course of that work has accompanied a lot of archaeologists on archaeological survey work in various areas. So through that experience, he has developed a strong relationship with the archaeological community on Hawaii Island as well, learned a lot about the archaeological artifacts and burials related practices and preservation. And so he doesn't necessarily have a specific history in archaeology, but he's just very passionate about the work. And also is very involved in the Royal Order, Kua Aina Ulu'awamo, Shah, his Shah, and other community organizations there. The next person is item 7. I'm sorry, item 8. Terry Napeahi, who is also a nominee from back in 2013. And I just want to note that since we've been doing this, we've nominated a whole lot of people. And actually, with these 2 nominations from all the way back in 2013, we now have almost every single one of the OHA nominees that we've ever nominated have been appointed to the council. Not all have been seated, or not all have remained seated for a very long time, but with these 2, almost every single person, except for one who currently has active litigation against the state, so maybe not be getting an appointment anytime soon. But everybody else has been appointed at some point, so that's really exciting. Yeah, the requirement is actually only that they select 2, that they appoint 2 per council from our list, but they're just appointing everybody from our list because we're so trustworthy. Yeah, we work hard. Yeah. So yeah, this Terry Napeahi, also a well-known name in the Hawaiian community, especially on Hawaii Island. She has genealogical ties to every moku on Hawaii Island, but currently lives in Hilo. So she's going to be appointed as an additional Hilo representative. I'll also make an additional note that many of these people there's going to be 2 Hilo representatives, 2 Kona representatives, and then on various other islands there are 2 representatives from various regions, and that's because for a few years, ever since we changed the burial council quorum laws, we have requested that for long-standing landowner developer vacancies, that the governor appoint and allow regional representatives to sit in those seats if there are no landowners or developers who want to represent landowner and developer interests on the burial council. Then it continues to threaten their quorum when they have 3 empty seats on every single council, because landowners and developers don't want to step up to represent their own interests. But when we have a full bench of regional representatives who want to do the work, we've just been advocating, and we believe that the language of the law allows for regional representatives to fill more than 1 seat. And so that's why we have 2 Hilo reps and 2 Kona reps here on this list. But so yeah, she has been very active with indigenous and historical arts groups, and also the Pele Defense Fund. I'm sorry? Yes, and then most likely at that point, when that session comes up, she'll be reappointed because it's just like the terms are basically, they're set, and so whatever seat you're going into, whenever that term is already set to end, even if nobody's been sitting in it, right, exactly. Yeah, and so that term is, I guess, in its last year. So it's actually kind of a complicated mathematical process that I don't even think the governor's office is fully understands which terms are open and how long they have left. But yeah, so she'll be up again in a few years. And they all can serve a maximum of 8 years, no matter when they started their term. Yeah. Yes, and then the last person that we have to discuss has 2 measures, like we said. One that would be ending this year, and then another to start immediately after. And so that's items 9 and 10. Her name is Carol Lovell. She's going to be appointed to represent the Kauai region on the Kauai Niihau Island Burial Council. She has currently retired, as many of the burial council members are. She's previously served as the director of the Kauai Museum, has been mentored by many prominent kupuna from that island, and in her course of her work at the Kauai Museum, has received a lot of training and participated in a lot of NAGPRA repatriations, and then as well has served as an expert witness at the Kauai Niihau Island Burial Council as a result of her work in those repatriation studies, and so she's already pretty familiar with the KNIBC proceedings and the people who are involved there. And then as well, she has been helping with um, making Lauhala baskets for reinterments for 15 years now. So she has been participating in reinterment proceedings and is aware and knows about the protocols and the community that does the work. So I'm sure she'll have an easy time fitting right in. So yeah, those are our. Thank you, Kamele.
And so we only have three bill position changes from previously recommended positions this week. The first is SCR 77. It's on page 3, item number 11. This resolution recommending a position change from comment to monitor. So this resolution would convene a task force to come up with a definition of bona fide agricultural producer. The state has, I think, struggled for a number of years to define bona fide agricultural operations in contrast to gentleman farms or other agricultural like activities that have led to land speculation, increasing prices that make it harder for farmers to actually do farming on the ag lands. So our comment would have suggested the inclusion of a Native Hawaiian mahi'ai, a traditional farmer, to make sure that any definition they come up with can include traditional farm operations. The Senate committee took our suggestion, and so they added that in there, and so we're recommending changing your position from comment to just monitor.
I have a question. Wayne, would the task force be composed of bona fide agricultural producers?
We don't know that yet.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I need to look at the specific language to see what the task force is.
That's okay.
Oh, I see. Okay, I got it. Okay. So the next measure is SCR 82. This is on.
Comment
Oh,
on
sorry.
agricultural producer. But first of all, I think the state's public policy. I mean, we have all the right words in place, but the execution of food security with respect to agriculture is a disaster. It's been a disaster for years.
True.
And you have to support something like this, but think that they're serious about this. I mean, it's going to be another one of those statutes that end up on the shelf and nothing happens.
So it's a resolution. So whatever language they come up with, the state would have to incorporate that. Counties would probably have to incorporate that in subsequent bills and qualify it into existing law. Okay.
Tie into the headlines in the paper, Alun Farms lease their agricultural lands out to farmers. They can buy or lease back. Not selling? Oh, I thought I read they can.
They're leasing it to 75,000 an acre.
Anybody that wants to be a farmer.
There's a lot of controversy about what's appropriate for use on ag land, and oftentimes we use the term bona fide ag producer to allow for maybe less than obvious agricultural uses on ag land. For example, some alternative energy projects, or, housing, workforce housing, farm housing, etc. And so when it is a part of an actual agricultural plan, then it makes sense that you're allowing, these less than obvious activities happen on ag land. So I think this is a part of a movement to try to better define what that means, so that you're just not letting anybody do whatever they want on ag land by taking advantage of, laws that were put into place specifically to facilitate authentic farms. So I think that's what the idea is, and we're super excited that they took our recommendations. There'll be a Hawaiian, a mahi'ai, participating in that to bring that perspective to this.
So the next position change we're recommending, it's for SCR 82. This is on page 3, item number 12. We're recommending a position change from comment to monitor. Originally, this reso would have created a new task force to make recommendations regarding public safety departments, correction officers, training and professional development, and so forth. And so we would have commented originally to point out that this new task force might overlap and be a little somewhat redundant with an existing task force, the HDR 85 task force that was created in 2016. The HDR 85 task force, just as background, was tasked with looking at making recommendations to improve the incarceration policies of the state. And so the reso was amended now to not create a new task force, but to instead ask the HDR 85 task force to kind of develop a comprehensive report on the Department of Public Safety's training academy. This it's probably something that should be done by the Department of Public Safety, and it's an additional burden on the task force, which is already has a responsibility to sift through and analyze the various policies in the state criminal justice system. So we're recommending just monitoring this reso now to see what the other agencies and what the HDR 85 task force might have to say about it. The next position change, it's similar. It's for SCR 169, SR 83. These resos are on page 3. They're items 13 and 14. We're recommending a position change from support to monitor. Originally, the reso would have asked the Department of Public Safety to delay building a new prison until the HCR 85 task force came up with its recommendations, so they could plan around those recommendations. It was amended to now ask the HCR 85 task force itself to come up with site recommendations for a new facility. This is something that the Department of Public Safety is already doing. I think they've already identified 13 to 14 potential sites. PSC also has funding and so forth to do this. So it would be an additional burden again on the HDR 85 task force, and so we're monitoring to see what kind of comments the task force and state agencies might have about this measure. And so that's it for our position changes and new positions for the matrix. We did want to touch base on four measures of particular concern and interest. Oh yes.
I remember there was another resolution where OHA was part of public safety's task force to look at something. Because I saw Mr. Espinda at Ikasuki's fundraiser, and he was talking to me about OHA is part of the task force.
Yeah, so that's the HCR 85 task force that was created in 2016. It should be. Yeah, they've been meeting. They're coming up with a final report. They're going to make the recommendations for the next ledge session. Although there is another resolution that would extend their deadline so they can continue their work. Yeah, well, this would be the task force that we're on, and it's asking them to in this case to identify sites for a new prison facility. Okay, and so just wanted to touch base on four measures of concern. First, it's SCR 85. This is a task force that would this resolution would create a task force that would look at having the board of trustees being appointed instead of elected. So this resolution.
What page is that on?
Oh, sorry, it's on page 63, item 270. Yeah. So we've been commenting on this resolution. It's passed WAM, Ways and Means unamended, so it's going to cross over to the House.
Trustees, you may recall that the House Hawaiian Affairs Committee held the resolution. So, we'll have to see if that continues to be their intention. I thought we had a really good conversation with them at that hearing in the House.
So after WAM, where does it go?
So across over the House, and then it'll get referrals to the different House committees. So probably Hawaiian Affairs.
So there were there were four resolutions technically. There were two introduced in the House and two introduced in the Senate. The House decided not to move them. The Senate is moving it over to the House. So unless the House has changed their opinion about whether or not they want to move it, they may be inclined to not hear it. So I don't think resolutions go to Congress. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. The next resolution, it's SCR 174. This is on page 69, item 304. This resolution, it would urge OHA and DLNR, I think, to uh, you know con- facilitate the establishment of an easement for the Agricultural Development Corporation for R1 water to irrigate state ag lands. Jocelyn was actually there at the hearing they had yesterday, along with Olu Campbell from our land division. So I think Jocelyn
Campbell.
wanted to. Okay, Campbell.
We had lots of fun at the hearing yesterday. Actually, what the resolution does is it requests DLNR to assist us. So actually, DLNR ended up opposing the resolution, which didn't make the senators that happy, because they were saying this is not our kuleana. But they're more than happy to help, but they're deferring to us. So we shared with the committee that we have made substantial progress on getting an agreement with ADC to transport their well water. This is specifically related to the R1 water. And we have asked them for a proposal, which we haven't gotten. So I think the bottom line is that in order to get funding for their wastewater treatment project, they need to, and Senator Dela Cruz is supporting that. They need to they need to figure out what the transmission is going to look like, and so, a part of the urgency on behalf of the state and maybe ADC is to get the funding and support to do what is probably a good idea. We've looked at the water quality that would come out of the R1 project, and of course we'd like potentially to partner with them to get access to that water for our own property. They need to finalize where the transmission lines are going to go, etc. So, I thought we had a really good conversation with them about where we're at. We actually met with Senator Dela Cruz afterwards. We went over the map with him, and Olu had a chance to talk story with the head of ADC, who happened to be who is also at the hearing as well. So, I think the bottom line is, I think we've been doing what we need to do, and maybe there's more follow-up that we can do on our side, which the senators had encouraged us to do at the hearing. Yeah. Okay. We have two more to go over.
Yeah. The next one, HB 533. This is on page 10, item number 48. This is the charter school facilities funding measure. It's still blank appropriation, but this bill did pass its final committee, so it will be going to conference. The other measure that we wanted to touch base on is SB 658. This is on page 33, item number 141. This is the airport corporation bill that would exempt the corporation from Chapter 171. So this measure passed finance in the House, so it will also be going to conference decision, and we've been opposing it.
Yeah. So, there's been a lot of talk down at the Capitol about, and in the media, obviously, about the airport corporation. We've talked a lot about what our concerns are. I don't know, I don't think that our concerns they could make amendments to the bill to alleviate our concerns if that's what they hope to do. Wayne and I were talking story yesterday about some potential ways to see if we can get buy-in about ensuring that they follow 171. So we're going to look at that today and talk to the chair if Ohana agrees, because the chair's office has been getting some inquiries from the Department of Transportation as well. So there might be ways to kind of convince them that a blanket 171 exemption is not necessary for what they're trying to do. So we're working on that.
Bifurcate this because I'm going to vote support this airport one. I had another question too on SCR 177 later.
Really quickly, Trustee, we're actually not voting on item 141 today. I don't know, Kama, how you want.
Voting.
No, because we're just giving an update. Yeah, we've already voted on this measure.
I just have a question on SCR 177. It's on page 69 about the historic National Registry for Historic Places. I was at a Bank of Hawaii not seminar, but a meeting yesterday with the branch managers, and they said people are coming in, and these are Chinese big money people trying to look for these houses that are on the historic places,
Mhm.
we're buying it cash because the property tax on this is only $350 a year. Historic places,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of them now coming up for sale. So I don't know if we should be concerned about that, or we don't care.
Are trustee, you're referring to homes specifically?
Yeah, these houses are paying only 350, and they're being bought by foreigners.
Right. I mean,
There's nothing that prevents foreign people from buying.
right. So we're interested in this because there, it's complicated, but essentially for older, for development on older projects, there's a trigger that may require more thorough review that are irritating people that own homes. And one of the ways that DLNR has suggested to kind of address that is by getting not just homes, but other important sites registered so that, we know which sites have significant cultural value, historical value, etc. So I don't think this is related specifically to the topic that you brought up, but what I will say is that, um, right, so the idea is they want to add sites to the list, and it's not just about homes, right? It's about other cultural and historic sites as well, so that when there may be projects on those homes specifically, it would automatically trigger, or we would know in advance that that would require those development on those projects would require much more thorough review. Did you want to add to that?
I mean, yeah, that's basically the conversation that's been going on. This is um, it's an effort that's been kind of initiated from within SHPD because it's something that their current director is really passionate about, because he does feel like it could address a lot of the issues that we're dealing with when developers are having to go through all these extra processes just because they have something on their property that is old. But that doesn't, that it is pretty focused on architecture, which generally we're not that involved with because we are more concerned about the archaeological artifacts. And I would say that while this idea, is it, first of all, it's really expensive. So which is the reason why they haven't been able to do it, because they're extremely under resourced as it is, and they don't have enough employees on staff to conduct the type of investigation or survey that they want to do. So I'm not exactly sure what kind of impact a reso like this could have without additional funding. But additionally, it doesn't actually solve the issue of discovering archaeological resources on parcels of land that are not yet already known. Um, yeah, but it can help the SHPD be more proactive. When developers are about to develop something, then they would already know if your parcel is within a historic district or within an area that's close by a bunch of other historic sites. It should be a lot easier to be able to tell.
I'm just bringing this up because there was a beneficiary, a Hawaiian person at the meeting who has money, and he wanted to buy that place, but he was outbid. The things that were coming in, so the Chinese company. Yeah, and he said, "Why? I'm local. I'm from here. I'm part Hawaiian. So how come I can't get the historic place, and this other person comes in, offers more money to?" Not related to this resolution, but it's
Right,
just
right, right,
the
right.
real world out
Right.
there is what's happening.
Right.
Now, we don't have anything that says, no, you cannot come here and buy when you're bidding against a local person or a
Right.
Hawaiian person, in fact.
Right.
Thank you. That's
Thank
all
you.
I want to bring
Thank
up.
you, trustee.
Trustee Oppo? You're okay?
So that's it for the big matrix. Here we go. Okay.
Trustee John, would you mind?
Oh, yeah. Mr. Chairman, sorry. I'd like to move to approve administration's recommendations on new bills, items 1 through 10, and bill positions for reconsideration, items 11 through 14, on the OHA legislative matrix dated April 5th, 2017, as amended, including the following additions: GM 600, 601 to support, GM 602 to support, and GM 795 to support.
Thank you. Can I have a motion made by trustee Waihe'e, seconded by trustee Hulu-Lindsay. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Abuisa.
Aye.
Vice Chair Huna excuse. Trustee Akana excuse. Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Apo. Aye. Trustee Hulu-Lindsay. Trustee Machado.
Yes.
Trustee Waihe.
Yes.
Chair Lindsay.
Yes.
7 votes, Chair.
Thank you. Motion is adopted. We'll move on to item 5A. Kapuana.
Thank you, Chairman. We'll move to public policies, OHA legislative package update.
Aloha trustees again. I'll go over the two resolutions really quickly. So our Konahiki resolution just had a hearing in the House yesterday, and it moved. Our Senate version, it already went over to the House. So the Konahiki resolutions are moving nicely. Our public charter school study resolution did not get a hearing in finance, so it's probably not going to move. But the Senator Kidani's resolution did move out of its last committee yesterday and will be moving over to the House. The difference is the scope of the resolution. It still would be, still think that it would be a good study. One of the things that we wanted to look into to expand the study to include was related to looking at the weighted student formula. As I mentioned the last time, we have started to go to the weighted student formula meetings, so there might be another mechanism for us to start getting some of that information. So we're still happy that that's moving. Again, as I mentioned before, you know, the priority is, well, one of the main priorities this session is to get facilities funding allocated, and it looks like that measure is moving, even though it's blank. And even if they only get a few $1,000,000 this year for facilities funding, it's opening the door for that being a regular thing. And so we really think that's important because that's where the huge disparity is, one of the main, potentially the largest financial disparity as it relates to funding for charter schools and regular schools. So even if the study bills resolutions don't pass, you know, if that continues to move, I think that's going to be a really big win for the charter school movement. And then the last measure is our budget bill. So I think we didn't have, I don't know if I think we had a hearing after last week's BE, but we had a really good WAM hearing last week. And we finally got a copy of the bill on this weekend. So $1.4 million per year was added back into our budget bill. So WAM has expressed that their position of the Senate is to give us all we've asked for personnel, which is a really good sign. Obviously, it still needs to go to conference. And so, you know, that may not be what we end up getting, but I think it's a really good sign when the Senate is saying that this is what we think OHA should get. We did not get restoration of our health, housing, and income provisos. And so, you know, that would, depending on how it goes in conference, we'll have to have a conversation with the trustees about, you know, what we're going to do about that if we don't end up getting it. But all in all, you know, this is over $1 million more than what we got last year if this ends up being our final budget. So we're super stoked about it, and we're going to continue to make sure to be responsive to the Senate and WAM committees and try to, you know, and continue to advocate with leadership on both sides to support our requests.
Can't be that easy. See, you have to worry about the house, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, any questions, trustee Lindsay?
So I've stopped giving updates on that because it's not moved for a few weeks already. So the Kirk bill didn't get its hearing in Hawaiian Affairs. So we have Senator Shimabukuro and our other friends on the Senate Hawaiian Affairs Committee for that. as well as the collective bargaining bill. But of course, next year, they could hear it again. So we'll see. For now, it looks like it's not moving. Yeah, I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. Concludes the chair. All right. Well, mahalo, Jocelyn, Wayne, Kamaili. Thank you, KP. Great job as always. We will move on to beneficiary concerns. Jermaine.
It's different from what you got in the folder. Okay.
Your testimony is being circulated.
I'm sorry. Okay. Um, I wanted to address two specific agenda items. The action item on the Bay action item, which I understand you discussed earlier, and then the other one was on the Senate bill that you just previously discussed about. Brickwood Gallietero actually was the author of it, and stating that he would like the OHA trustees to be appointed, so a task force would look into appointing them versus electing them. So since that is on today's bill, and in case I don't have time to finish what's going to actually be on tomorrow's agenda, I'll just address what my comments are regarding his desire to appoint trustees and create an. So the last page, it's regarding because in the verbiage that he stated, he said that he was concerned that elected trustees are not fulfilling their fiduciary duties. And so he felt that the democratic process could be better followed through an appointed trustee. And so in closing, in the third page, you'll see that I addressed the Waimea Valley concerns that I had. And then I would like to address, okay, so ownership of Waimea Valley. As promised, Lisa Victor sent a response to my increase from last week at last week's RM meeting. Yesterday, according to an email I received from Lisa, OHA does not own Waimea Valley. Instead, a nonprofit organization, Hiipaka LLC, owns Waimea Valley. Lisa asked me if I have any more concerns, and I responded that I would pray to Yahweh for the next step. What I want to say today is that I don't think the Native Hawaiian and Hawaiian beneficiaries of OHA know that OHA spent $14 million from the trust to purchase Waimea Valley in 2006, but then transferred ownership to a nonprofit organization in 2007. Under Chair Haunani Apoliono's administration, attached is the statement she made on the Waimea Valley website, which is the last attachment, regarding the transaction. Then each year, OHA gave, in the form of trust fund grants, an average of $1.5 million to this nonprofit organization from 2007 to 2017, which I took from the 990s and from the audit reports, for a total of $50 million of trust fund grants over the past 10 years. And what I want to say is that this nonprofit organization has taken $29 million from trust funds, in addition to the ownership of Waimea Valley, a property consisting of 1,875 acres of land. So referring back to today's agenda item, which is going to come up again tomorrow, regarding the artifacts. What I want to say is that I had emailed all of you about my concerns, yes, on Monday, 2 days ago. And in there, I've talked about Representative Ng, and then an article that came out on the 29th that I was protesting how come he came out, you guys put on the agenda for the Bay, something that was just brought up on the 29th, and then, but you negated to, put on the Waimea Valley, which you clarified for me, it should be on the RM committee. But what I want to say is that actually the conversation started off in the media from March 9th on Hawaii News Now. They actually broadcast it back then, which you have the attachment. And they basically stated that there was the 1,100 items and who the owner was, and that it was going to be on April 5th, 7th, and 6th and 7th. Today, tomorrow, and Friday. So OHA could have actually responded from back then, is what I'm saying here. But also in that report, Mr. Blackburn had stated that it's actually common to see large collections of Hawaiian artifacts in places across Europe. The story ends with the artifacts in the collection could fetch as much as $2 million. What I want to point out to you today is that there was a report on March 8th, the day prior. So if OHA staff looked into it, they would have found that there was an article that came out on the Hawaii Reporter that actually talked about the collection and about its being auctioned. But it had more information about the owner. And what it said was that this owner, Rainier Werner Bach, is one of the world's leading dealers in pre-Columbian art, compiled this unique collection of Hawaiian tribal art over a period of 20 years. And at the end of the report, it provided contact information as follows, which he talked about a gentleman named Julian Roop of Bendigo Communication, and it provided his email address. So what could have happened back then is that OHA could have done the following. Number one, they could have contacted Julian Roop of the Bendigo Group using his email address to discuss the artifacts. And then two, search for and contact the owner, Rainier Werner Bach, through the Julian Roop or other means, which they would have found out from him. He's from Maui. And then three, discuss the matter in a Bay meetings on March 15th, March 22nd, and March 29th. Instead, the matter came before you today in a resolution, which you shared with me, which I mahalo you for that. Because a group of nearly 20 Native Hawaiians protested the sale. In them protesting the sale, Mr. Bach said, "I never imagined being vilified for loving Hawaiian culture. I do love Hawaii and its culture, and I spent hard-earned money buying Hawaiian artifacts all over the world to bring it back to Hawaii. It's not my fault that nobody supported me in my dream to help make a museum." And so the story closed with comments on Representative Kaniala Ing of Maui, who decried the sale. But this is what I wanted to point out to you guys today. He said, "Here is a rich guy, an auctioneer, trying to make millions of makes millions of dollars of Hawaiian artifacts without reaching out to Bishop Museum or Office of Hawaiian Affairs for authentication." And then he went on to say, "It's irresponsible, unprofessional, and disrespectful, and what to our culture." I had contacted Kaniala's Ing's office yesterday, and I spoke to his chief of staff, Alan, as well as Yvette, his staff and aide. So because I want to say what I said to him, that it was irresponsible, unprofessional, and disrespectful to our culture that Representative Ing made these comments in a public forum, and now it's gone international. And so what I want to expound about that and why I say he was actually irresponsible is that, and I told this to Chief Allen yesterday, is that number one, Representative Ing internationally vilified a rich guy who spent his hard-earned money over a period of 20 years collecting Hawaiian artifacts because he loves Hawaii and Hawaiian culture. This rich guy lives on Maui. Number two, Representative Ing vilified this man while portraying Hawaiians as victims. Number three, Hawaii's economy thrives on rich guys and gals spending their hard-earned money in Hawaii. Number four, Ala Moana Boulevard and Kaka'ako, lined with affordable high-rises, our state. And so, in talking to him, I'm going to summarize now. What I basically wanted to find out was if he followed up with a statement that he made in the email that I sent to you on Monday, which was about the Maui Now report. In there, Representative Ing said, "We need to find some funds to bring them home for safekeeping immediately. I'm exploring whether state funds are available, emphasis on state funds, and putting a call out to all private residents with means. I'm hoping that a hero emerges who will not only buy the artifacts, but donate them to the Bishop Museum." So I asked Chief of Staff Allen if Rep. Ing found any funding from the state and or private residents. And according to him, number one, regarding House leadership and funds from the legislature, it's too late to ask for funding because it would have to go through the House and Senate, which would take a while. Number two, regarding state agency OHA, Representative Ng spoke to only one person at OHA and he didn't want to disclose the person's name. According to this person, OHA doesn't have a budget item for monies to be used for unanticipated expenses like this. To get funding from OHA, the beneficiaries and board would have to approve the last minute expenditure, which would take some time. And number three, regarding call out to private residents, Representative Ng made no cold calls. No one has contacted Representative Ng's office, but he's hoping that someone who heard his plea to the community would purchase items and donate them to Bishop Museum. Aloha. That's it.
Okay, mahalo, Jermaine.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jermaine?
Sharing that. Because you never know who else is out there that has Hawaiian artifacts. And now they're not going to come forward if they're going to be accused of reading. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mahalo, Jermaine.
Thank you. E hana kako.
Thank you, Jermaine. Announcements, we have a RM committee meeting today. No meeting today. Okay, all right. Kapuana, you have any announcements? Could we have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Trustee Lindsay, seconded by Trustee Wahe. I'm sure everyone is in favor of adjourning. Okay, mahalo everyone for joining us today.